All right, welcome everyone. It's November 10th, 2024, and this is another episode of Rough Cuts. This is Jonathan at Sports Cards and Sunsets on Instagram, and I'm here with my typical co-hosts, Nate at In Cardboard Veritas and Matthew at 1956 Tops Guy. And I see some buddies of ours coming into the YouTube live comments. We're also live on Instagram as usual. And I'm really excited tonight that one of our buddies that we've all known for a couple years in the hobby, Luke, who on Instagram is at Bleecker Street Cards, and we just discovered is by far the biggest fish of the four of us when it comes to followers online. So, Luke, we're humbled by you condescending to join our little podcast here. And welcome, guys. It's good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you guys. Thanks for having me on.
I think this is going to be a fun one. I'm excited.
Yeah.
All right. Good to see you guys. Thanks for joining us, Luke.
Yeah, it's been about a month since our last one, and we had a special guest, and we decided it was fun. So yeah, lots happened in the last month. We had the World Series, which was a big one, certainly relevant in the hobby. And yeah,
you got to bring up that dagger right away.
Right.
Yeah. Did you have a rooting interest in the series?
I've been a Yankees fan, all my life.
My
El Duque.
condolences.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, the El Duque collection.
Jeter. Yeah.
Was there an election since we last did one too? Can't remember.
I think there may have been. Yeah. So a number of things that I think had some various relevance in the hobby. But what an awesome World Series for the sports card hobby. You got two of the greatest players of our generation, and Aaron Judge and Ohtani.
Showtime.
Who,
yeah.
I mean, what they did this year in the league was amazing, and then for them to go head to head in the series. Although the series didn't really end up being so much about those two, but it was still pretty cool that it played out that way.
Yeah, that was kind of the only bummer is that they both underperformed. Man, Freddie Freeman, I mean, what a series that guy had. Unbelievable.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I was so happy to see, so much star power, but also the Gibson moment. That was pretty awesome. My boss was there for that, and he was wow. It was complete bedlam. It's so cool.
Have Freddie's cards gone up since then? Any of you guys tracked that at all? I would assume so, but
I would assume so. I can tell you that, okay, I was at Burbank Sports Cards today, and they did have quite a few Freddies in the case, and they seemed pretty steep to me. But that's my only data point on that.
Yeah.
I actually had the couple of days afterwards, I had some things running through PSA that I had pegged that were Freddie Freeman 2024 Topps finest cards, and I thought they were going to be $50-$60 cards, and they ended up doing $150, $200, and then my ComC, I had 12 sales of all the random Freddie Freeman things that I had listed there. So there's a lot of demand. I don't know if it's sustained, but those all were right away.
Yeah,
very cool.
Awesome. Well, so Luke, what we thought we might do is just start out by getting to know you a little bit more as a collector, hearing some of your background. I think what we like to do is start with the origin story and then go on from there. And then once we've dug into that sufficiently, the topic of the day, and you see that on the title of the stream here, is how much is too much. So we're going to get into some thoughts, and I suspect even debate on what is the right size of a collection for folks in the sports card hobby. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun. But before we go there, let's just talk about why you're here, why we know each other, which is sports cards. Where did it begin with you? Take us back.
Sure. So it began as Pokemon cards. When I was born in 92, Pokemon came out in 99 in the US. And I think something clicked in my brain about, organizing and collecting and building this zoo or Noah's Ark of random monster animal things with Pokemon. And it was actually a total obsession. And one of the only reasons I acquiesced about learning to read is I wanted to know what my cards said. And so it started with all those things. And my dad would kind of like just put up with it. He worked part-time at Barnes and Noble back then. And so he could get kind of cards for me all the time, but he always tried to get me to watch sports. And I just more interested in playing them than watching. But when I turned 10, so I was like 3 years into collecting Pokemon at this point. When I turned 10, he brought down this like massive, I don't know, plastic tub of just loose cards. And he said, I started collecting baseball cards when I was 10. You're going to start now. And so he handed me his whole collection, and it was like near complete or partial sets of every sport from 68 to 73. Baseball, basketball, football, hockey, the tall boys. He hit a good run there with a couple sets of that, 99 card run with a bunch of basketball rookies. But I really fell for the 68 top set. That was the first year that he started to have cards. And that's also where he said, hey, you should go find Nolan Ryan's card. It's his rookie card. And you got to go find my Mickey Mantle. I only ever had one Mickey Mantle. And so it was just in this random tub, and he just like dumped it in my bedroom floor. And you can just imagine like the PSA 7s go to PSA 4s to 2s. And we don't know anything about that obviously at the time, but and I remember finding that and then getting the Beckett guide, and there's like family photos of me at reunions or parties, and I have my Beckett price guide with me because I just would love to flip through and see like the, what was happening year over year, and what the cards are worth. And totally just like I said, something clicked where I loved the collecting aspect. I loved kind of just the, I don't know, almost like meditative, mindful practice of flipping and organizing cards, and reviewing, looking at the backs of cards and learning about players. And I'm like, hey, Dad, is Willie McCovey any good? He hit 50 home runs one year, and he'd tell me something about what he remembered there. And so that was kind of the initial love affair. And I think I got really into just baseball history because my favorite team, the Yankees, were doing great. It was in that massive run, kind of 3 or 4 World Series in a short amount of time. And then they had a great, obviously, Yankee history. And then all these vintage cards kept making me want to learn more and more about, the older players. And he gave me that baseball documentary, the Ken Burns thing from the 90s. And we watched that together. And I lived with my mom, so it was kind of like a special thing to go to him and watch, do things together with usually around sports and cards. And when I saw that and saw the Negro League inning, where it was just all these amazing stories and talents that I had never even seen in any of the Beckett guides, right? Like, and I was just like, wait, this guy was better. This was the Black Babe Ruth. This guy was the greatest showman of the first half of the 20th century. Like these guys are huge legends, and they don't have any cardboard representation. It was just kind of really weird to me. And so then I went on this big run of trying to find those cards and getting interested in their stories. And thankfully Upper Deck and Topps were putting out some subsets at the time. I've got a few here, but of like, these are the cards that never were, or cards that could have been, I think was a subset called. Yeah. So you can see like there's Pop Lloyd, Ray Dandridge, Neil Suttles, Judy Johnson, Martin DeHigo, Rube Foster, Cool Papa Bell, Buck Leonard, Satchel Paige. So I just had a lot of those, like a lot of fun chasing those, I guess, and hunting those, and learning about the players. And that was the initial thing, like everyone, you get really just have something you love when you're a kid, and high school and sports and college. And it wasn't until I had my first job with real money post college where I started to buy more than the occasional couple of cards a year again. But I'll pause because I think I rambled on for too long a little bit there.
So over what age range are we talking about here? You said you kind of started, and you born in 92, kind of started collecting 99, something like that.
Yeah. I think 99 was, the Pokemon started for 3 years. So 7 to 10. And then I remember 2002 Topps being the first real baseball set that I got. And so I just have a real, love. And I have a bunch of those wax boxes in my closet, just because whenever I kind of want a, nostalgia hit, I open one of those packs. And so that was 7 to 10. And then 10 to probably 14 was when I slowed down, like right early high school. When
were you going to like LCSs with your dad or like card shows?
Definitely.
Or were you like a pack guy? Yeah.
Oh yeah. We were, we would go to one of two card shops, one super cool guy. But he didn't ever have like, his inventory didn't really turn over. And so it's kind of the same cards you're looking at over time, but he's such a nice guy. So we'd go to him for packs, and then we'd go to this other guy where he was honestly just a jerk to all the kids. I don't understand how he was in business. He's no longer in business. But he had a bunch of new cards all the time. And so we'd go to that one. But yeah, those were tons of happy memories there. And even then, I guess I had a little bit of a kind of previewing or foreshadowing later in the discussion, but I had just collect everything type approach where I remember looking at the stacks of players in each of those shops and being like, okay, I need a rookie card of every player I've heard of, basically. Like, and to do that, you had to really stretch your budget, because my dad would come in with like a $20 bill. And so I'd grab like the cheapest Vince Carter rookie card, the cheapest, Tracy McGrady or Youngman or whoever it was. And then also throughout baseball and football. And looking back, that like was not the right call financially, but at least it led me to have, pretty full binders, I guess, which spend a lot of time flipping and organizing. So
I would be shocked if there is anyone who like started collecting the most like investment savvy way. I feel like the formation of like that strong collecting bond starts with like, I just like went after everything and like tried to like get just to get as much as I could.
Totally.
And Luke, how about like the college years and after that, what did you take some time off, or were you pretty consistent, or?
No, I took some time off. I mean, I think I was always interested and had an eye on it. I remember having an eBay account since I was 10 or 11. And then, I would always look at stuff throughout college, but I just didn't ever have money. I put myself largely through college, and I just didn't have the time or resources to buy stuff. And then once I got my first bonus at a bank in New York, my first job after college, that was 2015. That's when I was like, okay, I'm gonna get a card that I've been watching for a long time, or one that I wish I had when I was younger. And that was a 53 Topps Jackie Robinson that I remember I spent like $200, and I was like, wow, I just lit that on fire. Like that was stupid. But then you get
but
it.
I love it.
You love it. Yeah. You're like, oh my God, this is my prized possession. But and I would do that, then it just slowly grew. I mean, I would basically only buy that one kind of end of year bonus card, and then, packs when I saw it, or if you're in a random town and you see an LCS, you go in and grab a couple of things. But it wasn't like an online obsession until 2020 when COVID hit. So yeah.
Got it.
There's some things about the story you told that are almost universal. Like when we dive into these things, there's something about the ages of it. We all tended to drift away in the high school years. I think you get more interested in sports or girls or just what's going on with life. And then, when we all came back, although I think you came back faster than Nate, Matthew, and I did. The other thing about your story that reminded me of one of the guys here was the dad comes in, and these were my cards, right?
Yeah.
Nate, that was your father also had some cards. Is that right? And some better cards that my dad might have had a few, but certainly not like 1968 Mickey Mantles or boy basketball cards. And I recall your dad had some Willie Mays cards, maybe.
Well, a little similar. We collected a lot together when I was a kid, but my dad's childhood collection didn't survive. It was one of those many collections from the late 50s and early 60s that got tossed out at some point. And he knows it was around for a long time, and then at some point in like his early adult years, suddenly it wasn't there anymore. So
oh, yeah, isn't it? I can always phrase it as like that's like the one mistake your grandmother ever made.
That's right. Yeah, That's her only blemish.
They're worth so much, though. That's because nobody knew back then.
Yeah.
Luke, something about your story that was similar to mine is you started with non-sports. Yours was Pokemon. Mine was Garbage Pail Kids. And that's, I always talk about it, coming back to that. And for me, when I graduated from law school and got my first real job, I was living in a crappy apartment, eating ramen every night because I just wanted to pay down my loans. But I bought on eBay packs of Series 1 Garbage Pail Kids, one at a time, and I ripped them all open until I had the whole set. I still have every one of those cards, have the whole set, that's where it all started. And then I veered like you did into, okay, what are some of those baseball cards that I really had my eye on? And
do you still have those original from when you were a kid, Garbage Pail Kids?
I do. Wow. My mom never threw them out. They were in an Airwalk sneaker box. I was a wannabe skater kid, and I had all of my. But I started right at the end of Series 2, beginning of Series 3. And Series 3 is when they started overprinting them. And so from my own youth, I have completed Series 3 to like Series 7 or 8.
Wow.
But I never had those early series. So those were the ones that I really coveted. And that's how I went back. Tell us a little bit about how you went from thinking you burned $200 on a Jackie Robinson card that's worth a lot more than that now towards, really branching out in a bunch of different ways. But you're known online for collecting some really rare, beautiful, and valuable signed vintage cards as well. So just tell us the journey from, buying the $200 cards to the 4 or 5 figure really rare cards, and how that defines you as a collector now.
Yeah. So I think in early 2020, the YouTube algorithm got me with some of those like card investment or card show recaps. Like I remember Sasha Tamadon was like a really popular YouTuber at the time. I don't think he does it anymore, but and that just hit my feed one day, and I just got pretty like interested in it because it was talking about my old hobby or my current, random thing that I would do at the end of the year. And I guess I like heard about ads and things. And I remember going to Heritage Auctions and being like, whoa, they got Mickey Mantle signed balls. Like I thought that like no one had those, like I didn't have the concept of like what was like out there and like rare. And I remember getting like a couple boxes of cards that were probably like Topps Tribute, like these kind of off-brand things, but really focused on autographs and patches. And I skipped that early on, but I was obsessed with patch cards. So I'd always have a rookie card and a patch card of like every player. And that was brand new technology, more or less in the early 2000s, for it to be so prevalent. And they ended up, unfortunately, again, not really worth anything today, but I just loved the idea of connecting the player and your card and to you. And I couldn't afford autograph cards. So when I got that Topps Tribute box in 2020, I was like, oh my God, I can pull like autographed cards. Like I just, again, like I'm just learning stuff like, and of course, everything costs you money to learn things. Like I learned a lot of lessons in 2020 and 2021 and, still this probably going on to today, like how to narrow in and what's really going to be worth your time and will bring the most joy. But so I just was shocked that like you could buy boxes that were guaranteed autographs. And I ended up pulling a Derek Jeter autograph, which was one of my favorite players growing up. And I think I was just totally hooked at that point. And, you could do like in Texas here, it wasn't too strict during COVID, and you could do like a local pickup at your LCS. And so I'd like place an online order for some boxes and so I did a lot of that ripping, a lot of watching Sasha T, and I guess I would just call it all like fumbling in the dark for like 2 years, trying to figure out what actually brought me joy. And then I got on Instagram because they were always doing deals on Instagram, and I thought, okay, well, this is how you like do it now. But then you end up following really great collectors who are, I think, create way more interesting content when they talk about your favorite card, or give you an interesting pairing or something, and showcase just the love of the card rather than like the cash on the table. And so, Nate was one of the early accounts I followed. Maddie C was also a big one, and I remember like, again, being blown away the first time I saw signed Mickey Mantle cards. Like, just hadn't even crossed my mind that you could do that. Even though I did a little bit of TTMing growing up, I just didn't think you could take like a really precious Mantle card and then have him autograph it and make it even more interesting. And so I told Matt that I was like, hey, I'm going to go after a PSA 7 Mickey Mantle run, because I wanted to get into vintage. Mantle's like the safest, most interesting storied collector or collectible player. And I was like, I want to do his whole run in his jersey number, PSA 7. And he just immediately threw up on that idea. Like, he does not mince words. And he was like,
yeah,
you could not waste your money faster than doing something like that. And he was telling me all about the eye appeal and the lower grade. But then he's like, you really got to go after what people don't understand are these autographed cards. And, just the idea that they're so rare and scarce compared to, other ways to collect these cards that we love. And you're bringing going back to that patch idea from early on, it's bringing me closer to the player. Like, they held this and autographed it. And I always liked that idea. And I just felt like he had climbed the mountaintop of Mickey Mantle. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to be number 2. And my favorite player growing up was Jackie Robinson. And I think his would be even harder because he passed away in 1972. And, it would be even more rare and like fun thing to hunt. And that's what we always love. It's like the favorite card is the next card. And so I'd just be like always on the hunt, getting on these forums and things, trying to find Jackie Robinson autographed cards. And that was one of the first times that like the light got turned on. I say like fumbling in the dark in 2021 and 2022. And I got my first Jackie signed card here, 54 Topps. And I got it in hand. I was like, this is a next level of collecting that I didn't know existed. And it's like,
hold that out so we can see it too while you're talking.
Oh, sure.
So folks can see the autograph on that. Oh yeah, you see the facsimile and then the real thing there.
Yeah, right next to it. It's not showing up too much in the glare. But that was the first one. Yeah, I got it from a guy who was going after the signed 54 Topps set, which he just completed. It's the only completed one in the world because there's a couple pop ones. And he had just an extra. And it was sitting on eBay like with 4 watchers at $12,000. And I contacted him through a forum and I was like, hey, we do a deal outside of that. And I paid $9,000 for that. And like, the fact that I was just sitting there for that long is like, looking back, is crazy, because I think the last couple auction sales were like 40 and 50 for this. So things, I guess, can go up and certainly can come down. So we'll see the story, how that unfolds here. But I was lucky to get that first one. And I think it created a Diderot effect, which I think I was planning to talk about later. But basically, I just looked at this card and then compared to every other card I had, like nothing came close. And so I started to like level up the whole collection, right? Like, okay, now everything's got to be at this incredible, breathtaking moment when I get that mail day. Like, I want it to be huge. And I think I learned some more lessons, and figured basically the fast forward is I found some sets that I really love collecting in the autograph vintage world. And then I've found some other ways to like stay engaged with a consistent mail day or consistent fun time at a card show without spending crazy money. And I think that's also important. So
Yeah, there's that thing, right, where you like get a card that's like so massive that it like changes your collection. It draws your eye to it all the time, and it's like so powerful, right, that it almost like sucks the oxygen out of the rest of the collection. And then you've got to kind of like refine that balance of like searching for that feeling again, but then having cards that are like just fun, that are just like easy, right? Because it can't all be like that, right? And it kind of
you go broke pretty quick.
And it's really like the projects and the process of curation that I think brings that about very often with the smaller cards, right? Like Luke, you I know you have so many neat collecting projects. I know it's the 2003 Topps Chrome Basketball Black Refractors that you have all raw in a binder, right? And you have what's probably one of my favorite chases of any collector I'm aware of, and that's the 48 leaf signed set that you're chasing, which is just unbelievable. And so I know, just as an example, when you find new cards that you're missing, and I think you're really close on the Black Refractor set, right? Or oh yeah, but
that one is just LeBron. But
is it? Yeah, okay, yeah. But finding those cards when you have a project like that fit into that set or that chase that you're doing gets you really excited. And sometimes that's a $50 card or whatever it is. Yeah.
No, totally. That's exactly something that I think, is important in the collecting journey is like assessing your emotional reaction to a card, regardless of the value of it. Right. And, and just being like, that's okay. Like I get really pumped about a $50 card. I don't have to be so excited and wait for like this $10,000 grail to post on my page. Like and that's what set collecting does for me is like, I have a few that I don't know if I'll ever complete, like the signed 48 leaf one, but it keeps me chasing and excited about, a random Pop One Pat Siri autographed card that like, no one's ever heard of that player, but when I found it show up after 3 years of never even knowing it existed, I was like telling my girlfriend about it over dinner, like this is amazing, and she doesn't care at all. But and I have a couple other modern sets that are like that. I'm doing a full 2019 Topps Sapphire run or set in red refractors, and so that's numbered to 5, and I'm just over halfway, but it's so difficult to just wait for these random players to come up. And it's a $7 card, but when it comes, I'm opening that faster than I do when it's like a random Robert Edwards package with a bunch of random stuff in it. So that's one of the best things about the hobby is I think when you have those like light bulb moments where you can find something that's really gonna bring you joy or like a moment of memory or nostalgia, then you can just target that rather than constantly up leveling your collection.
I like how you described wandering in the dark for a couple years, which I think a lot of us did before the light bulb went out. And something I love about the story is what you found and what works for you is, it's different than what Maddie C likes. It's different than some of us like. And there's a lot of folks in the hobby that will just argue about what the right thing to collect is. But really the right thing to collect is whatever weird thing you're into that gives you that feeling. And you have a lot of those. I often say I love a really long, slow project because it fills up so many little spaces of looking, like you said, looking for those little pieces of the puzzle. I think you have even more of I have some projects that I know will be like a decade at least. And I think you've got even more of those than me.
Yeah. Who knows? But there are some that I have something here that just a binder of random side projects basically. And, it's just I was telling you before we jumped on, Jonathan, that like this new Topps update has a Josh Gibson card in it. And it's Josh Gibson becomes the all-time batting average leader.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do the rainbow for that card. And it's like 40 of them. And I don't know if they're all going to pop up, but like, I just, I want to chase that. And then I also have my backwards hat Griffey binder where it's all just every card with Griffey with a backwards hat. I have like, I'm trying to do quote unquote master sets for El Duque and Mariano Rivera, like some of these players that I really loved when I was pitching as a kid. And, just trying to get as many of those as I can. It's like 2 binders each of, 700 cards that I'm like, I don't know why this is not valuable to anyone, but like, I love flipping them, and, ComC is happy to keep cashing my, checks. So,
well, for folks listening on the podcast audio only, I feel worth mentioning that Luke is wearing a backwards cap. So we will refer to him as the kid for the show for other reasons as well. So I'm going to transition to our other topic, and what you've shared already, Luke, maybe gives me an inkling of where you might weigh in on this. And like I mentioned at the outset, we wanted to have a conversation about what is the right amount of cards to have in a collection, or how do you think about that question? Something that caused us to think about this was a recent article that popped up in the New York Times. Nate, why don't you share a little bit about the article for the audience, and then Matthew, you can maybe weigh in with what your thoughts were when you initially saw that.
Yeah, so it was the New York Times article spotlighted a collection that had been located. I haven't looked back at the article in a bit, but I recall that it was about a 20 million card collection that was housed in a vast warehouse space, and a collector somehow came to become aware of that collection, purchased it, and then subsequently has spent a tremendous amount of time sorting through it to try to kind of determine what exactly is there. I think the vast majority of it is, kind of commons and, sort of lower level stuff, but certainly some gems have been coming out of there as well. But Matthew, have you looked at that article more recently? Do you recall some of the other details there?
Yeah, so let's see. So just to give the correct reference. So yeah, it's a New York Times article dated September 14th, 2024. It took place in Virginia. I think a guy basically like bought, I think it was maybe like someone had died, or it was either a shop or something like that, or an antique store that had all this stuff, and then he went and kind of bulk bought this collection, which again was like 20 million cards roughly.
Yeah. Right. And so, Jonathan, I think that got us kind of thinking about the topic, and Matthew, you, I think, kind of brought it up at the time as well of, wow, I think we probably all agree that that's too many cards.
20 million is perhaps not a collection. It's maybe a problem. I recall watching there was a Chris Sewell video on YouTube of him buying a collection that was basically, wall to wall, a garage. You could barely walk around it. And I remember thinking, I don't know if that was 20 million, but too many. But so let's dive in to the debate. As we all think about what is the right size of a collection, or what do we aspire to? What are our goals? Matthew, how do you think about this? I think of you as a curator, and pretty focused. But where's your head on this one?
Yeah, so I don't know if there's a more interesting or important question than this. For sports card collectors or card collectors, because it's there are lots of consequences to how you think about the answer to this question. And I guess I would start by saying, like, certainly, the intent of our discussion here is not to be like prescriptive. Who the hell cares what we think? Do what you want. Like that's the fundamental answer, is like, do whatever you think makes sense. But it's a super interesting question to think about, because of the consequences it has for the choices you actually make in the hobby, right? And I think the way that I think of it is I start with, of course, there has to be some upper limit, because it's either going to be set by like physical space, which of course, like you get to the point of 20 million cards, you're going to have like another house or like a storage unit or something. And that might be set by like, your own living conditions, your willingness to upset your significant other by like taking over a room full of cards, right? So there's like that limit. And then of course, then the other one is like financial, right? It's like these things cost money. And so there's a choice about where you are going to spend your money, which is kind of dictated by the answer to this question. And some people like, I want to give a lot of shout outs here. Like we've got, Publius 13, who we had on last time, right? His kind of thing is like, it has to fit inside this 100 card case. And if I'm going to make an addition, there has to be a subtraction, right? He's got like, he kind of thinks about it that way. I'll say that like my personal opinion on this is that, the way that I've kind of come to think about it is that I should not have more cards than what I can recall by my own memory without a hint or something like that. Because if I can't like recall the card, then it probably doesn't mean that much to me. It's therefore like forgettable, therefore it's expendable. And like given my finite resources and finite space, like I shouldn't use it. And so maybe the way that I kind of wiggle around that concept a little bit is that sometimes like I don't necessarily think of it as just a card, but maybe like it could be a group of cards, like if it's a set. So maybe it's something like there's some finite number of projects and cards that I can have, that I can hold in my RAM at any given time. And if I can't hold it in there, then I probably need to let it go. And so that's kind of how I think about it. And the way that maybe one more statement I'll make is that often at night when I'm trying to fall asleep, the game that I play with myself, the game that I'm playing in my head is I'm trying to go through my card collection mentally and just remember all the cards that I have. And then if I find moments where like, I can't quite remember this card, that means that maybe it's on the chopping block. Maybe it's not really that memorable. So that's how I think about it.
I was hoping
needs to be.
Go ahead, Luke.
I was just gonna say, I think that needs to be a Lamine James post, like the man and the wife laying in bed. What's he thinking about?
Yeah,
counting his baseball cards.
I love that meme.
That's right.
So Matthew, I was hoping you would mention that idea or that line of, if you're crossing the line to where you can't remember everything you have, you've gone too far. I was hoping you'd say that so I could quote Dan Aykroyd and say, "Jane, you ignorant slut." You couldn't be more wrong. At least you're too young to remember. That was a Saturday Night Live skit back in the day.
I know.
Would never go over today. I think that line is super important. That line of what you can hold in RAM. I like how you've characterized that. And for my own collecting, I will just say this, and then I want to hear from others before I dig in further. I think that line is exactly the point that I want to always make sure I'm above in my collection. For a number of reasons. I've even brought some props to illustrate this point. But before I go further on that point, Luke, why don't you share kind of how you think about what the right size of a collection is?
Sure.
One thing before that, Jonathan, I want to say I'm impressed with how ready you were to retort Matthew's thought about that. You did your homework on this one, man. I like it.
I did.
It was more punching than substantive, but
True.
Well,
Good counterpoint.
Matthew, you are missing out on one of the best hobby sensations or experiences, which is you are flipping through a binder of cards and be like, "Oh, I forgot I had that card. That's awesome." It's like a free mail day. You're like, I didn't pay anything for this. I didn't even know it existed, but it's an awesome card. That's something that I like specifically want to happen, is that I, will always be surprised by some of the things that I still have. But I agree with you. And you mentioned like you need to have a top number, top ceiling, so that it doesn't, like run away from you. But I guess in my head, it was always some kind of like disposable income calculation. Like, what is the amount of excess that I'm okay with just being card focused and like not at all impacting, my livelihood. And that was like not ever a number of cards. That was just like, okay, well, I'm spending a lot here. If I'm spending a lot here, I should probably cut it back and sell some cards. And it's just kind of like fluttering around a certain, not even valuation, just like cash into the cards, because, you just want to be like, I don't know, use it. You'd be wise about your money, but also like use it in whatever ways like the wind's flowing for you in a certain time. And that's why I've tried to stay flexible. But like, I do think there's an issue there where, I'm looking at a handful of cards here that I wanted to just bring out in case the conversation went a certain way. And I'm like, there's some that I own that are, just not on that same level, right? Like the Diderot effect of like, you've got this amazing card. Now everything else looks worse, even though they were just bringing you smiles or whatever 2 days ago. I try to like actively combat that by, appreciating like certain segments of my PC, like my signed Jackie Robinson and my signed Satchel Paige, signed 48 Leaf. Like nothing else that I'm going to build is going to come close to those. And I just want to be like able to say, okay, those are great. But I'm also a collector of, random memorabilia cards and, pop Pokemon cards, or I've got like a bunch of Adam Sandler autographs. And I'm like, I really love those things over here. And I don't want them to be like swayed too much. And the only issue there I find is just that like that money lie where, you think a certain cool amount, like a new card will bring you this much joy. So like 4 new cards will bring you 4 times the amount of joy. Right. And that's, I just haven't found that to be the case sometimes where there are downsides to being surprised by your own collection where you're like, oh, I should never have bought that thing or whatever, because now I'm like wishing I just had that cash sitting around. So I guess the short of it is I don't have a great answer other than like be smart about your overall money into the hobby. And then it's like really just to, use it however you want. And I use it with, I think I've got like over 1,500 graded slabs. I think I've got like, I know there are 14 binders in my place filled with cards, a bunch of shoe boxes. It's all stuff that like I'll go through on random days, but it's certainly not like limited by a number or the ability to recall them.
Nate?
Yeah. Great thoughts. Yeah. And, in terms of how I was thinking about it, I felt like I'm kind of taking as a given, but certainly one worth stating and reiterating that whatever the number is, it needs to be within the parameters that are, for each person fiscally responsible. And also, probably often equally as importantly, responsible from a time devotion standpoint. I think it's easy to use the word like obsessive and addictive and things like that with this hobby. And, probably a lot of hobbies are like that, but ours certainly is no different. And, to the extent that you're spending too much time on it and falling out of balance with other very important things in your life, either too much time or too much money, that's probably an imbalance. And I don't know if that's too many cards or it's just too much money on them or too much time, but I kind of took that element as a bit of a given. But in terms of the number, so I'd estimate my number of cards to be, and it's a pretty rough estimate, but it's a pretty big number. It's like probably 20 to 25,000. And the vast majority of those are from when I was a kid and collecting. And, I just got so many junk wax boxes, like, of that, probably like at least 80% of it is junk wax stuff, including, and this is an interesting one in terms of how many cards are too many, so many boxes of commons, and then, a step above that is the sets, because I would like as a kid collector sort out all my cards on the floor and put together sets by hand. And I still have probably at least 10 or 12 of those sets. And, so that's probably about 7,000 cards right there, because the sets were pretty big back then. And but then since I got back into the hobby in 2020, I've probably added, my best guess is, like 10% of that. So 2,000 to 2,500 or so. And certainly a lot more intentional. I don't, when I first got back in, I opened some wax. And so that's, in terms of numbers, kind of the main way to really accumulate some big numbers. But I don't really do that anymore. So it's kind of one card at a time. And they certainly add up a lot more slowly in that way. But, a big part of it is the space that you have. And, can you house them comfortably? And, I have a closet that's devoted to them and they fit really well in there. And so I probably should get rid of those boxes of commons and maybe even some of those sets. But, I'm happy with how they are there.
Yeah,
and
there's not like someone's like, we got to reclaim this space, Nate.
No, yeah, it's like, it's my closet and it's good to go. And I reorganize it. I'm actually in the process of reorganizing it right now. And so because one of the ways I kind of think about it as well is, too many cards is maybe when you go from feeling like they're treasures to feeling like there's a clutter element, and like when that word clutter starts to creep into your collection. But I think there's two ways you can react to that. You can either get rid of some cards or you can reorganize them. And if you reorganize them better, then maybe they feel less like clutter and more like treasure again. So,
and that's part of the fun, right?
Yes, big part.
I have a number of very large boxes full of cards from my youth. And I love maybe once a year, maybe twice on a rainy day, going through some of those boxes and just seeing what's there. And I've sort of strategically left some good cards in those boxes because of the joy I get. And then I have other boxes. Like I've bought some collections. I grabbed this box. I keep most of my cards in, I call them units, like these big IKEA, they're all from IKEA, where they have drawers and cabinets and they're just full of, one of the units, the top is all full of unopened wax. And then there's my complete sets, some in binders, some in boxes, junk wax stuff from my youth, some random stuff like this. So I literally don't know what's in here. And I go through it from time to time. Let's see what's on the top. Well, I got 3 Cy Young cards in here. These are Cy Young, the Javelin Olympian. These are junk wax. I've got a Gaylord Perry. What's that? Is that an 81 Topps?
Yankees, nice.
I've got some Topps Finest basketball cards. Tony Gwynn from 80. Just fun stuff. And occasionally I'll go through it, and then I'm like, some of those are binder worthy. I'm going to leave them in there, put them in the back of the unit. And I love going through things and not knowing what I'm going to find. So the forgetting to me is an important part of it. I've often said my goal is like Marshall Fogel. If I can just be like the 80-year-old guy that has like every awesome card in the world, that would be amazing. But what I want to avoid, I definitely want to avoid clutter. So like reorganizing and having it being, nicely cared for is one important thing. And I don't want it to ever be a burden to my family. So I would rather, as time goes on, the stuff that's sort of meaningless, that only is important to me, I'll start at some point in time, I'll start to pare that down, because I would like anything that I leave behind to be things that would be valuable, easy to send to an auction house, or just toss it out with the recycling. But that's the way I think about it. I am somebody in the comments who we know well, Chris, says this is not curation, Jonathan, and I am in fact no curator. I figure if it gives me joy, I'm in this hobby not for discipline, but just joy and nostalgia, and so I go a lot of different ways, kind of like you do, Luke.
Yeah.
Well, and Jonathan, we have that plan where when we hit 75, we're going to rent the Airstream and travel around card show to card show and pare down our collections, right?
That's exactly right. That's why I was saying, once I get to Marshall Fogel status, then hopefully I'm retired and we're just going to show up at all the shows and just start, at least pay the airfare with selling some old Mickey Mantle cards and have fun being those guys.
So Luke, I want to get into this question. Let's maybe reduce it to you had this question, Luke, that you posed in your story, right? Which was like it was like a slab count question, right? Like how many slabs do you have? So what kind of results did you get from that poll? I want to know what these numbers are.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull it up right here. Okay, and this was I think there was like over 300 votes here.
Nice.
So it was 4 options. How many graded cards do you have in your PC? Under 50, 50 to 150, 150 to 400, or 400 plus. And I just kind of picked those. I realize now, like, I am in that 400 plus.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wonder if, Matthew, you had created it, like, would your lower bound be even lower than 50? Like, is that, like, to me, it would be like, oh, that's the lowest anyone would have, right? But then I got so many responses that were like,
Yeah.
I have 15 or 20. And so,
Yeah, I mean, I would have done log steps. I would have done like,
okay.
I would have done probably like, yeah, maybe like 30, 300, 3,000 or something like that. Probably would,
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, obviously, like a single card does not a collection make. But then you hear people who have, I've heard people on podcasts and stuff talk about like their 10 cards that they really, they spent all this time kind of curating to this 10. Yeah, we've got Rated Rabbi who's got, he's got a 54 card PC limit. And then he's got like, he's excluding some projects, right? I think that's kind of close to mine. Like I can't recall all 340 like top 56 tops cards from like mentally, but I certainly can like the graded one. So my graded card number, I just looked at it, was 279. That's my total graded count.
That's
number.
more than I thought.
Yeah. It's actually kind of, what was your number, Jonathan?
What I thought you had?
No. What is the number that you have? Graded cards.
I'm well over 1,000. I'm kind of like where Luke is, I think, because some of those are complete sets that I'm trying to get all in slabs, and those stack up quickly.
Yeah. So then, what about if you delete? What about if you say that the complete sets count as like 1? Then how many would you have?
Yeah.
Like,
and by the way, that's an interesting concept. I do kind of think in some ways of complete sets as 1, because
like
I think
block,
about it
right?
as like someday if it was a lot at auction, it's one thing, which I like. I have more than 500 if I exclude the complete sets or the sets in progress. But it's probably in the ballpark of 500, 600.
What about you, Dan? Or sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, my best guess is probably in about the 400 to 500 range, something like that. Yeah.
And Luke, where were you if you do the bunching? Like if you group the set stuff.
If I do the bunching, I'm probably closer to where Jonathan was, 400, 500. Because I do just have so many sets that I don't think of that way. And I think that's like, so going back to the poll, 400 plus was the lowest option, 16% of responders. Wow. And then 150 to 400 was 19%. And then 29% for 50 to 150. And then 36%. The most was under 50. And I think there's some like selection bias, like who are the 4 guys that are going to make a podcast on a Sunday night about baseball cards. They're going to have, like the most amount of cards probably versus the average Instagram follower might be less than 50. But it was interesting to see. Like, I mean, that's no right way to hobby.
Yeah, no, I would have thought it skewed higher. I would have guessed it skewed higher than that. Because I always think of myself actually as having like on the smaller side, but according to at least those statistics, I'm not.
Here's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Please. Well, I was just going to say, Matthew, I think when I was sizing up your collection, I often forget about the modern Cubs stuff that you have, and that's a good chunk of those slabs, right?
Yeah, it's a huge chunk of them. Like I can give you. So I said 279 was the total. And then of that, because I'm super anal, right? So I've got an Excel spreadsheet that has all the cards. It has like what categories they exist in. And so if I select out all of the 2016 Cubs, so it was 279 total, and of that, 40 is actually only 40 is 2016 Cubs for graded cards.
That's a good chunk though. Mm-hmm. That's a cool part of your collection.
I guess another thing that when you mentioned this podcast idea a few weeks ago, it made me like kind of get like, I need to figure out what is the right number. Like what should I, and then I released that eventually, and that led to my answer just kind of being a blah. But I was really thinking about it, and it made me send a bunch of stuff out for sale. Like I sent 2,000 2,000 cards to COMC, and then about 400 slabs to PSA. Not necessarily to like sell auction. Almost none of them would be like sell auction, but I know PSA is releasing in Q4 the bin option on eBay. So I'm going to be like, I'm just going to put a bunch of stuff up that like it's not in that tier 1 or tier 2 for my collection. And maybe there's a price that like I just would be totally fine letting it go for, but I don't want it to go for something I would buy it back for, you know, go for really cheap on auction. So it made me do a lot of that. And yeah, I mean, I think Mookie had said it in the chat earlier, but like actively reducing your collection can be kind of fun because it does get you excited about, you know, reflecting on what you really like and then what you could use those funds for to buy something new.
That's a good call. Nate, closing thoughts on the collection size?
Yeah, so I agree with that point, Luke. As long as it's done kind of selectively, there's an element that's been, you know, I think we all probably have some hobby pet peeves, right? Especially like when you listen to influencers a lot, certain things that come up or whatever. One that I developed over time was what I felt like was a pretty strong and consistent push for people to consolidate their collections, and in like pretty aggressive ways where like get your collection down to 10 cards or, you know, with the goal being to like push your collection up to this tiny number of like more expensive cards. And I feel like I heard that that collecting theory so many times without much in the way of counterbalance to it, which is the love and the joy of collecting a lot of different things and having a lot of different projects. And, you know, I know all of us here enjoy creating binders of 9-pocket cards, you know, and that's something that I think we grew up doing and still get a tremendous amount of joy from. And I have, you know, a ton of those. And one of the things I've been working on lately that's been, you know, tremendous fun is growing that out. And it's mostly, you know, one binder in particular, and it's like $10 to $100 cards. And I just feel like that's such a fun, like visceral, like just constantly enjoyable part of collecting that people are really missing out on. So, you know, there can be too many cards, but there can, in my view, like, I think you got to have at least 410 cards to be a collector. Like you got to have a binder with 40 pages of 9 pockets. So that's 360 and you got to have 50 slabs. Otherwise, don't tell me you're a collector. I'm only 80% serious, but
you heard that, Chris, in the comments. Matthew, response, and then I'll give mine.
Yeah. So, okay. A couple of things I'm thinking about is, so I just did a quick, you know, being like a super Excel nerd or whatever, I just made like a pivot table, you know, of all of the slabs that I have, so I can see like how it's distributed among like the different collections. And so, yeah, so there's this 279 kind of total, and then of that 279, there's 40 from 2016 Cubs, and there's another 80 from that run I did of T206 to 1991 Topps, like, because I basically collected, you know, one Cubs card per year. So that was like a good, so that's like a good 100 of the 400. And so, like, I think for me, so much of like collecting is like about like, you know, it's the enjoyment, but it's also like I really enjoy the evaluation. You know, like not from a value point of view, but like looking at how my collection is distributed, both like in numbers of cards and how much value is in which sub collection, and like then coming back to like, does that make sense? Is that what I want to be building, right? Because often think about it as like you know, like a museum or something that's of the stuff that I love, but like a museum has like finite space. And there's only so many collections a museum can have before it like doesn't make any sense anymore. And like for me, actually, that drives like a lot of my collecting decisions. So while I definitely agree that like, you know, the goals shouldn't be just all about leveling up and condensing your cards into this one super card all the time, I do think that there's, at least for me, a lot of like creativity and enjoyment comes from imposing constraints on my collecting, and then like using that to kind of refine what I really love, to kind of maximize that feeling of when you look at the card, how much enjoyment it gives you. And I feel like without just by like constantly aggregating, it doesn't, you're not, I mean, everybody can do what they want, of course, but I feel like there's so much value in kind of self-reflection, criticism, evaluation to see like, am I really getting as much enjoyment out of this as I can? Or are, maybe I should close down this wing of the museum because it ended up not being as great as I thought it was in terms of how it made me feel. And I'm going to go, redevote that space, financial, time, those three resources into something that does make me a little bit happier. And so that's kind of, I feel like that's kind of where my head is right now. It's kind of like, it's all about maximizing an enjoyment. And at least for me, a big part of that is by kind of identifying these constraints and then using that to refine what brings me the most joy per card, per time.
I like that idea or vision of the museum. And in fact, when I was talking about like, I want to be Marshall Fogel, I in some ways, that's what I was thinking of is I'd like to build a collection at some point in time that I could display in a way that's like, here's the museum. And then once I get there, probably start taking it apart and, writing the show circuit with Nate and selling it down. But I think that concept, like Luke started and you hit it, which is we don't always follow avenues of our collecting that turn out to spark the joy. So by the way, before I conclude this topic, I went through the box some more. Here's some nice 87 Donruss, 2 Rafael Palmeiro and a Benito Santiago rated rookies. I found an 85 Topps father-son card, Yogi Berra and his son, a Tiger Woods card. This stuff gives me joy. And in fact, I would love for there to be a room in the museum where people could walk through and open little boxes like this and not worry about dog-earing the card and look through it. I've made tons of mistakes, like deep, deep mistakes in my collecting journey where I started collecting things that I didn't like at all. And then I did have to, so I have also, like Luke, I've sent hundreds of cards off to ComC. I've sent binders and graded cards to Greg Morris to sell down. And so I do think I would be remiss to finish the topic if I didn't sort of acknowledge that I think we as collectors, when we find out that we went into a part of the hobby and we're wondering, why did I do that? I'm not interested in the player. I don't like the look of these cards. And so I think that's when we know we've gone too far, is if suddenly you're like, I'm not getting anything out of this. And in fact, it even gives you anxiety sometimes to have these assets if you don't believe in them. And so I think that's oftentimes when, it's, like you said, Matthew, time to close down a wing of the museum and focus elsewhere. That was an awesome topic. Yeah. And thanks for all the comments. As we usually do, we're gonna wrap things up by all of us sharing a recent pickup, or if you don't have one, just a recent card you've had out, on the shelf that you've been enjoying and that you've got out on the display. So why don't we start with Nate?
Okay. Yeah. So I unfortunately don't have them in hand, but I have 2 recent pickups over the last month or so that I'm pretty excited about. So the first one is a 61 Fleer Bill Russell.
Oh, and boy.
The glare is kind of rough, but it's
the centering comes through though. Wow.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. And the color.
And the saturation, that looks great.
Right. Yeah, it's a PSA 5, and yeah, that was the thing. It's, just kind of hit the sweet spot for me in eye appeal. I'm a big 61 Fleer collector, and now I actually have the Wilt, the Oscar, the Jerry, and the Russell all in a PSA 5. So it was I wasn't kind of intentionally going for that, but it ended up working out that way with adding this one, and they're all like kind of nicely centered and pretty clean. So that really sort of hit a good spot for me. We sometimes, kind of embrace the overpay, if you will, on high eye appeal stuff. And I got jammed pretty hard on this one. I think I paid, I think it was 50% over average comps for a 5. But so. I was like, man, come on. I've been looking for this card for like 2 years and to find one that looks like this. And so
that's when, That's when you just go like, well, what's a PSA 6 cost? I'd rather have this over a PSA 6.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We have all those little crutches, right? To get ourselves there when we need to. Yeah. And then the other one I just got last week, and that was the the mantle card that I've really wanted, which is the 52 Burke Ross.
Wow.
And
Man, look at that thing.
That looks great.
You did not share that with us before. That's sweet.
Yeah. I put it on my stories actually after I got it, but that was quick. Yeah. It's in an SGC3. And so this has been the kind of top mantle card that I've wanted for quite a while. And it's proven fairly elusive. It, like so many cards, has a lot of centering issues, but then also very frequently some registration issues as well. So finding one that looked nice in a lower grade took quite a while, and it was at auction, so I was able to get it, I think, at a pretty fair price, unlike the Russell, which was buy it now. But
yeah, and that and the Red Heart mantle you both got recently, right?
Yeah, it's actually it's ended up really kind of being a mantle centric year for me. Those have been the opportunities that have popped for me. So a big part of my collecting this year has been mantle focused, which has been a lot of fun.
Awesome stuff. All right, Matthew, what do you got?
All right, so I got some fun stuff. So first card up, let's see, is so I've shown it in the screen here. What I'm showing is a 1989 scorecard, Wrigley Field Gem Mint 10. So this is a fun card. It's card number 652. This was a big deal when I was a kid. I remember opening a lot of 1989 score, right? This is like right in the most strident era of the junk wax, right? And this card is a card there aren't many cards that are just like about a stadium, right? Especially in these early days. This one is a card that celebrates the fact that in 1988, the Cubs for the first time had lights at the field so that they could play night games. And so, and this played an important role in, in the Cubs' fortunes in the years previous. Like you can write, one of the theories why the Cubs are generally bad is that they play so many day games that the players get tired, and it's they kind of fade in August. And it also played a role in the 1984 playoffs in terms of how many games they got at home, because they only played during the day. So this card, I mean, I don't generally buy high grade cards, but this is a 10, and I think it has like a pop of 20. But for me, like so much of what I collect is about like marginal cost, and so this card was like a $20 card in a 10, and it's probably like a $4 card in a 9. But then the difference in the actual dollars is so little. It's like, why not buy a 10? I loved this card when I was a kid. Yeah. So I picked it up, and it's super fun. I think I talked about this card when I was on the podcast with Rated Rabbi, where we went over the 1989 Cubs season. So this is a classic card. This was a big deal card from when I was a kid. So got that one recently. That's a lot of fun. Another card that I got, want to show off is this is 2019 Stadium Club. This is a Sammy Sosa rainbow foil. So of modern cards, one set that I really love generally is Stadium Club, because I love the photos, right? This is like a classic, like Sammy Sosa just hit a home run and he's doing his hop right after he hit the ball. And so I think this is out of 25, I want to say. And it just looks cool. Like the rainbow looks really cool. And it was just like randomly on eBay. And I was like, that makes me think of exactly when I think of Sammy Sosa, this is what I think of. And so I saw the card, and so, I am a curator, but I also just, I love, I do love like being like, maybe I should open a new wing in the museum. Maybe it should be Cubs rainbow foil cards. So this is what
seasonal exhibits.
Yeah, exactly. So who knows how long this will stick around, but I saw it and I was like, yeah, that's definitely a card. That's definitely a card for me. So those are my awesome recent pickups, both Cubs cards.
See, I told you, Luke, we can do the shiny stuff on the show too. I'm gonna go next because I want Luke to get to be the last one up. This, harkening back to the 10-year project I'm on, I have been working on completing the 1957 Topps baseball set, all in PSA 6 or higher, and I'm doing that just to piss off Matty C. So what I have here, I'm about 40% done 3 years into the project, and holding up the number 1 card in the set, Ted Williams. Look at the centering on that, guys, and it's got nice color too for the sepia 57. I was really picky on this one. I think it was a My Slab buy it now, and I just like they weren't even accepting offers on it, and I was like, yeah, I gotta go. I just gotta hit the buy it now. That was a while back, but it went to my PSA vault, and I just got it in hand pretty recently.
That's a great addition, man. I love that. I remember seeing that card when you got it. That thing is that's so nice. I do have a bit of bad news for you, though, which is when you finish this set, I think we're going to have to insist you bring it to the National that year so we can all peruse it over some beers. So it might require an extra suitcase that year. But we got to see that baby when it's done.
Yeah, I'm going to have to be one of the guys with the rollerboard suitcase. I will do it.
Good.
I'm going to bring it.
Good, please.
Now I just have the big Hall of Famers. I just need the Sandy Koufax, and then I'll pretty much be done with the big cards in the set. So that was fun.
The toughest card in that set is the Lucky Penny card. Do you know that one?
Is that one of the?
It's like one of the. It's like card 407 or something like.
Yeah, it's a checklist.
Checklist redemption card, and it had like an actual penny in it, and so you can't ever find
cards, it. The checklist cards are impossible, and there is a PSA set registry one that includes those. I'm doing the one that's just up to 406, which is I think the
got it.
It's got the multiplayer Campanella card.
Sweet.
If I recall,
but yeah, I think of this as Ted Williams' last like great card. I know he was in the 58 set. But this is number one in the set, so it's a great card too. Matthew, were you saying something?
I was going to say that I think 56 Tops was the first year they had checklists, like as part of like the set.
Oh, is that right?
But yeah, and this is another odd fact of when cards kind of blew up during the COVID timeframe. Kind of all cards and vintage included. One thing that was weird was that the checklist cards from 56 Tops did not like go up by nearly the same rate as all of the other cards. They used to be quite expensive. I remember collecting them back in like 2010, and then now they're comparatively cheap, which is weird. Like that's the one of the weirdest things that I've noticed in terms of like which cards have gone up and which ones haven't. Those ones maybe it says something about like people moving away from set collecting or something. I don't know, but it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, I think so. I have Oh, sure. Well, I just have a soft spot for checklist cards. One of my favorite cards in my collection is my 69 Tops Tall Boy checklist that my dad marked when he was a kid. And
that's cool.
It's really sweet.
Did he mark the whole thing, Luke?
No, he did.
Did you say he collected that full set or
he did, yeah. He just like didn't mark it all. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Like he left like 3 blank or something.
Oh, really? Wow. So really close though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I got a few cards here. Just because you guys are representing the high eye appeal vintage side, I'm going to represent the low eye appeal.
Oh, wow.
Zero registration.
I need my 3D glasses on that one.
Yeah, big time.
That's awesome. Wow. I haven't seen many 62. So that was for folks listening, a 62 Tops Willie Mays with the wood border. Pretty off center and so off reg that we're all seeing triple now. And I don't think I've really seen that before on the 62s, that off reg. Certainly a lot of sets are known for that, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, 62 is one that like sometimes gets it. I got a Carl Yastrzemski when I was on Cape Cod, and they like thought it was like a worthless card. It was like in a dollar bin, and I was like, I would pay more for this than a random nicer looking one.
So is this where you tell us that you have a binder full of wildly off reg cards?
I was gonna say that's one of my side quests. I have a bunch of those.
A wing in the museum.
Yeah, 3D glasses ones. But all right, another one to honor the crew. This is 89 Tops. You have to have this as a baseball card collector. But this one in my collection is signed in 1989.
Wow.
He had a certain autograph style in 1989, 1990. And this one was autographed that year. I just got that in.
That's an awesome card.
Yeah, it's like sometimes I've owned a bunch of Griffey Upper Decks, but like when you don't have a personal tie to it, it's just such a common card that like you're like, oh, if it's not the one I had growing up, or Like you just kind of let it fall out when, you want to trade it or sell it or something. But this one feels like a special enough version of it that I'll hold on to it. And then this one I've had for about a month or so, but it's easily the biggest recent acquisition I've had, and it's on brand for my set, and I just have to give it its time in the sun every time that I get the chance. And that's
Pop one, baby, right?
Yeah, Pop one.
Signed
only
48 leaf Larry Doby.
Yeah, Larry Doby signed 48 leaf. It's got some water stains, but like not the worst. I mean, a 48 leaf can look really rough and really bad registration, but this one's like pretty good. And the Y, I like how the Y of his autograph like blends into the collar of the jersey. It's like almost like it was meant to be there in a way.
Oh, cool.
But it's I can't really be picky when I need one for the set, and it's the only one I know of. And I mean, that one's been grabbing my eye for a while.
And that auto is beautiful.
Yeah, I think
looks
it would
really
be
nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you get most of your cards and autos graded, right?
I do. Just this one is so expensive to grade.
Right.
It's like I don't want to spend like $2,000 or something just to have it say Auto 10 and authentic.
Totally. Yeah. And you did a trade for that one, right?
I did. Yeah. A great collector, one of like the best collections I know of. A guy named Dwayne Tom. He is on the PSA set registry as the #1 set for signed rookie cards, signed Hall of Fame rookie cards. IP autos, and he had this one in his set, and I had a high grade signed 49 Bowman that would like actually get him higher up the registry, and he knew that I loved this set, and so we were able to figure out a trade. And I mean, just another thing, I guess it wouldn't have happened if I wasn't involved in the community and reaching out to people and being each other's cheerleaders and whatnot. And that was an awesome pickup from last month.
Yeah, and Luke, you've had several great pickups from your community relationships, which is really cool. And then also, I think you do a really neat thing strategically, which is to sometimes acquire cards that are doubles for you or that may not be the perfect fit for your collection, but that you have a good sense might ultimately be really good trade chips to use to try to get cards, right? And so you're kind of looking around the corner to see what you can, because a lot of times people that have these super rare cards that you're interested in don't really care to get paid for them. They want more cards that are going to really appeal to them, and that's what can pry it out of their hands, and you do a good job of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, something that, for Jonathan's idol, Marshall Fogel, like, he doesn't need the money for the cards, right? Like, he'd be someone where you try to get something from him, you got to, like, bring him something even more interesting. And that's, another reason that I constantly am looking for cool cards at decent prices that I think will, be something I can enjoy, but then also be, like, useful in getting me, either a trade or a big profit or something that would help, my core collection.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've learned a lot from you, Luke, and as well as it pays off just to be a good guy in the hobby, because I think, you do it really well, and it's cool to see how the connections you've built lead towards you getting cards like the one you just showed us. That was a real mic drop kind of a card. So this has been a blast. Thanks so much for joining. I think we should call it here. But guys, maybe we'll do it again next month.
Sounds great.
Thanks so
guys.
much for doing this.
All right.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Take care.
We'll see you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Luke. See ya.